Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today's class is going to be on the next set of chapters for Castle of Wizardry, chapters 13 through 18. And hopefully you are enjoying it. We are pretty far through this book, and so only a couple classes left, and then we will be on our fifth and final book for this series. Hopefully you have continued to enjoy talking about it and enjoyed reading it as well. Always love these books. Definitely fun to revisit them and to discuss it with you guys. So hopefully you guys feel the same. Before we go ahead and start off with our class, let's go over our trivia question as always. I guess this one was a little bit of a trickier one. It was one where you had to select or name what book was on a particular cover. And I only had one correct answer. The answer for it was Eye of the World, which is from the Wheel of Time series, the first novel. And Christian Dance with Jack o' the Shadows was the only one that got it right. So congratulations to Christian for getting it correct, and thanks for everyone who participated and tried their best to guess which book it was. If you yourself would like to join the trivia, I would be happy to play with you, and it would be great to see your responses. If you go over to the blog, fantasyfictionfanatics.net, you can find the questions over there. If you're on desktop, you'll scroll down just a little bit. It'll be on that right-hand side after you scroll down that little bit. Or if you're on mobile, you'll scroll almost all the way down to the bottom, and then you'll see the question down there. Also, if you participated in the previous week's trivia and you don't get a chance to find out through the Discord or through the video if you got it correct or not, it will show you which person or which participants got it correct underneath the question. So you're always welcome to check if you got your answer right the next week on the page as well. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into today's class with our recap. So, a little bit of a slower section, I feel like. We have quite a few things that happen, but they're more little things more than big events. Belgarion is, at the beginning of this set, is just attending to some basic duties that he has. He's holding court, answering questions, hearing concerns, that sort of thing, with the help of Polgara and Belgariad, of course, with all the kings, watching him and seeing how he does. And he ends up heading back to his room from holding court and is almost killed. He doesn't realize he doesn't know who it is at first, but he is almost killed by a knife being thrown at him. So he tries to settle it discreetly and asks Leldorin, his best friend, to see if he can find the person who matched the knife and the strap of cloth that was left behind as the person who tried to kill him escaped. But no luck at first. And so on Sinedra's 16th birthday, she presents herself to him, and he agrees to take her as his wife, starting the official beginnings of their engagement, and says that he is going to have her ruled jointly at his side, which does cause quite an uproar, though he does not change it, and nobody else knows it, but the prophecy did help him choose that, so that is very interesting. Belgariad and Pol both give him an amulet that used to belong to Polgara's sister, and he presents it to Sinedra, who puts it on, and it does become fixed permanently to her neck. Pol and Belgariad did want to make sure that she was forever tied to their family. Unfortunately, Garon has to reap the benefits of that choice without his knowledge, unfortunately. And then there's the whole process and the proceedings of the engagement being hammered out, everything that was going to be set as the agreement for them being married. The high priest of Belar ends up coming in to the island in order to do the proceedings to make it official for Garon and Sinedra's engagement, and they are then officially 100% seen as publicly engaged. And then they have a war meeting for the war that's coming with Torak. And through this meeting, he does end up finding out who tried to murder him. And after he leaves, he goes and confronts that person, who ends up being Bran's son, and handles that accordingly by giving him his life, but making sure that nothing else will happen from him. Then the voice speaks to him, and he finds out through the Marin Codex and the voice that tells him basically this is your destiny, is to fight off against Torak, and the whole big war thing can be minimized if he goes off in search of Torak and just goes and confronts him at the very beginning. So he, Belgariad, and Silk all decide to sneak away in order to find Torak and do what he believes will then make the war shorter and to be able to just jump to the chase and defeat Torak, or hopefully defeat Torak. On their journey, the three of them end up going to the fens of Drasnia, which is a marsh of a kind, and they're traveling through it, but are kind of struggling to get through it, when the fenlings, the animals that live there, do end up getting, kind of capturing them or trapping them and bringing them to Vordai, who is a witch that lives there, and she demands that Belgariad make it so the fenlings can talk, otherwise they will be trapped in the fens forever. And so that is the main sense, or the main recap that we have for this set of chapters. We got some interesting things going on. Definitely pretty early with the whole, traveling to find Torak, especially since we have a whole nother book. So we're going to see exactly how long it takes for him to actually find Torak and where this book is going to progress for that battle that we now know for certain is coming, though we've already been setting up for it since I feel like book 1. It was pretty obvious that the end result was going to have to be Garon defeating Torak. If that is what's going to happen for good to win. But for good to win, he's going to have to fight him. And we will just have to see how long it takes him to find it, how, splitting up this big group of all these characters that they compiled together is going to work. Definitely a lot still to happen in the time that we have left for this series. First, let's talk about world building. So this story has had many books, and of course even previously in this book we have talked a bit about world building, and as we see more of the world and new places, it continues to build and build. And this section of the book that we're talking about is no exception. We do continue to see world building, which is really amazing that by book 4 we can still see new things, experience new things, items that we have never seen before in this series, some things that might even be new to us as, being specific to this series, and to continue to learn more about this world and the kinds of beings and creatures and things that can happen in it. That's, to me, a good sign that this is a solid story, a solid series, is that we continue to build new things and have interesting things that we did not expect continue to happen. So we are in the fens at this moment, at least Belgariad, Garon, and Silk are all in the fens in Drasnia. So this in general has a lot of world building in this small section. I know it's kind of like at the end of the section that we're talking about, but this is where we see a lot of world building coming up, because we have the fenlings. And these are creatures that we haven't seen before. We haven't heard of them before. We don't know anything about them until now. And they are just animals. They're not even creatures or monsters or terrible beings that are going to come and kill you. They're actually just animals. Animals that we don't have here on our planet or anything like that. So they are brand new, something interesting, something that is only living in this area. They are indigenous to this kind of swampy marsh area. And they have also been altered. So Vordai did alter them a little bit, made them more... We're not 100% sure exactly what they did, but it seems like they've made them more smart, given them more humanistic personalities. So they have been changed, and so we also do have the world building of knowing these animals, and then knowing that these animals can be changed and modified with magic. And, Belgariad did mention that that was something pretty big that she should not have done, because even the gods would not have changed the nature that they created in the first place. So very interesting animals. They're very, very smart. Truly something unique so far from the story. So we're seeing new creatures and how they interact with people, specifically the one person that lives with them, Vordai. But through her, we kind of see these personalities that these animals have. And then, but the same person here with Vordai, we see that there is multiple layers of magic that we did not realize before. It really starts out earlier in the series that it's kind of like all the magic users are sorcerer or sorceresses that are Aldur's children or Aldur's disciples. So we really feel like, or at least I have always really felt like throughout the series, it kind of sets you up to be like, this is how magic is presented in this story, is that you are a sorcerer or sorceress if you have magic, just like, Garon is technically considered of the same level of being an Aldur's disciple, even though he hasn't actually been taught by Aldur, but he has been given with Aldur's gift of magic. So he works through the will and the word and all that kind of stuff. Just like Polgara, just like, Belden and all those other disciples that they have come across so far. But now we kind of understand that there are levels of amounts of power and amounts of magic that can be wielded. There are such things as witches, which Vordai is, I'm pretty sure I'm saying that correctly. Vordai is a witch who did not fit in with society very well. That was partly her own fault, according to Belgariad and the information that we have been given, that she was kind of driven away. But this gives us this world building of more about how magic works, is that we don't have just the sorcerer sorceresses and that's it. It's either magic or there's no magic. Now we see that there's the sorcerer sorceress, there's the base layer of somebody who has no magic, and then we have this in-between layer of a witch who has magic but not the same abilities or quite the same amount of it as a sorcerer or sorceress does, and they cannot perform that much or that complex of an item. Like, for example, she wants Belgariad to give the Fenlings the ability to talk. And she does not have the magic to do that, but she knows that Belgariad or Polgara do have the amount of magical ability in order to do that. So super interesting to know that there are power levels. Obviously, it doesn't seem like she is somebody who has the pre-portion of the name that's added once you're a magic user, the bell, or the pole, I believe, for women. And she is just this witch in kind of the middle of nowhere. It doesn't seem that she has any connection to Aldur at all. So super, super interesting that we've got now these kind of layers of magical abilities. We've got this more complex sense of like who can work magic, who cannot, and what the sense of magic can do to a person, just like an average everyday person who's trying to live life, but not trying to live, secretively and in the dark, that is not supported by, being 7,000 years old and being literally a legend. Thought of very poorly by her peers, and she was kicked out of her villages that she tried to fit in with, and is now just living with the Fenlings all by herself. So I feel like that's super, super interesting and does add that complexity for magic, for this world, and how those things work, how the magic works in this world. And last but not least, another part of the world building is just the Fens in general, that this marshy, murky world that has just plants that float around and look like islands, but they really are not connected to anything solid. And it's very hard to find a piece of land to dock at for the night, because everything just moves around. Okay. So we've seen previously in this book, the sand and the desert and the wind and stuff like that we had not seen in anywhere else. And that was another part of our world building that we talked about. And then now we see this marshland, which is very, very different from that kind of place, where they're just trying to find some way to get from point A to point B without drifting somewhere in the meantime. They don't really know how to get through it. They don't really know where they're going precisely. They're just thinking that they're going in the direction, but they're really unsure. So it's pretty interesting place, landscape, interesting choice of direction that they're going. It's leading them into some problems, of course, and that, of course, all obstacles do have to stop our heroes, but I do like to see this new area, this new thing that we haven't seen, especially since that first traveling when we're doing, even though we're going through a whole bunch of different areas and a whole bunch of different countries, it was more of the people that were different and less of like crazy extremes in landscape. But this book particularly, we've gotten lots of views of more different, extreme different landscapes for the sandy desert. And now we've got this marshland that's very hard to get through, and they're wondering if they're even going to get out. And we have this witch who is now telling them that she is obviously very, very familiar with this area. And the Fenlings are obviously, that's their home, is going to stop them from getting out altogether if they don't help her. Which I think is very interesting that Belgariad can't do more to counteract her or to get out for themselves if she can manipulate that. But we don't yet know enough about the marshland. We don't know enough about Bordai and how the magic works, or what kind of way she'll be blocking them off, whether it be the Fenlings or actually with magic, to know for sure why Belgariad is not able to do more at this time. So definitely feel like we are entering at the end of this section, we're entering kind of a new, interesting set of places, new people that do introduce more depth to the things that we already know about this world. New creatures or animals, new adventures and obstacles that are going to be in our character's way. Let me know what you think of the marshland area, of the fens, of the Fenlings, all of that kind of stuff. I'd love to hear how you feel like that has incorporated into the world, and if that's something that you like, if this is not one that is your favorite kind of location, if you feel like it added depth or if it didn't. I would just love to hear your thoughts and feelings on the matter. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the voice. So this voice that Garon has in his head has been around since book 1. Very early, I feel like, in book 1. We have the voice manifest and tell him what to do or give him the feelings of like how he should act or behave. So he's had this for his whole life, being very much at present. And it wasn't until fairly recently, about a book ago, that Belgariad and Polgara were aware of this voice, aware of what was kind of leading him in certain ways. And we've never really been given a full-fledged naming of it. We don't know, have never known at this point, like, who this voice belongs to. But now we have fully been given a name to what this voice is, why it's there, everything. It has been kind of officially been put out into the universe and into the open for everyone to fully understand that this is the voice and why it's around. So Belgariad is the one that tells Silk that the voice is a manifestation of the prophecy. So it's actually a thinking entity, this prophecy, I guess, in many ways. And though it does not act directly with everybody, it is a kind of a full thinking entity and is directly in contact with Garon. So we now officially understand this voice is the prophecy, helping get the events right, helping get Garon prepped and where he needs to be by directly talking to him and helping him out, as well as at a couple times through Garon talking to Polgara or Belgariad. So it's super interesting that a prophecy or a set of events that are supposed to happen actually has a full consciousness in the universe and is actively trying to get things to where they need to be. I find it such a super, super, super interesting concept to think that something that you would normally think of as, I'm trying to think of like what the word is that I'm actually looking for, but basically something that's not alive, even though maybe a god or a higher being gave somebody a prophecy or a vision of what the future has to come, usually we don't think of that prophecy as a living being entity in the universe conducting things around. You think of it as fate, but you don't really think of fate as something that has its own consciousness and can interact with the world. It just means that no matter what you do, these are the events that are going to happen. But this particular prophecy, and we do know that there's two of them, so it makes me wonder if the other prophecy is also a thinking entity trying to work the universe to get their super interesting idea on that. But we do know at least this particular entity or prophecy is a thinking entity that can interact with the people in the world, is this universal, it's just part of the universe but has its own thoughts and can interact and direct things to where they need to be in order for the prophecy to happen. Such a cool idea, so interesting. I think that it's super cool. I feel like up to this point it seemed like maybe the orb was the one talking. I know I've had a couple people in the comments say, oh, it's probably the orb. And I know that it does seem like that's a pretty good guess that it would be the orb talking through Garon, but really it's actually the prophecy helping make the events of the prophecy happen. So super cool, super interesting. I like how in this part of the section of this book, we are seeing much more of a personality from this prophecy. Like we actually are getting to feel like it's more than just a nameless voice that is guiding Garon. He commented on how like the person that he used to write the Marin Codex was nuts. He was like, yeah, this guy was crazy. I worked with what I had. I'm so sorry. Like, it wasn't my fault that it's a whole jumble. This is what it means because this guy really could not get my message across to save his life. So we see that kind of personality where he has his own thoughts and feelings about people and what's going on and what his, how hard the prophecy's job is to like do these things, but he was working with what he got. He's more communicating with Garon on his choices that he's making, like the way he handled Bran's son, the way he does certain things. He's like got this little bit more of his personality where he's just like, I see how you handled that. Like being more open in his communication, a lot more kind of chatty at this point. Maybe it's because, the prophecy ending is coming near, but definitely a little bit more of that personality instead of just this voice that is like monotone saying, hey, this is the way things are, this is what you need to do, now go do it. Now we see a little bit more of a loose personality, loose kind of, what he thinks. It's so weird saying that the prophecy is a he, but I mean, it's just kind of coming out that way. But you know what I mean, is that the prophecy, whatever it thinks, feels, that kind of stuff, is just being very open, giving it much more of a personality, giving it much more of a role as a character at this point, and being much more direct with Garon. Instead, it was more like, oh, I'm going to tell you this cryptically here, and I'm just going to guide you cryptically there, and that kind of stuff. Instead, now he's just like, okay, go to the Marin Codex. Okay, look at this section. This is what the section means. Sorry about that, but this is the end all be all. Take it or leave it. What do you want to do? So I definitely like this development in that voice that he has. Besides, it's another thing to keep in mind is that this voice, being the prophecy, what will happen when the prophecy is fulfilled? Will that mean that once this prophecy is fulfilled, that voice goes away? Or will it stay around? It is a thinking entity, but does it have a time limit on just when the prophecy is fulfilled, that then that is that entity's life? That's something we're going to have to see. Also, we have the moment where we finally have it shows him the full destiny that he has. There is no cryptic stuff anymore, and I feel like that's really an important step that we make, is that now we're just putting everything out on the table. It kind of has a shift in mood, kind of has a shift in where we're going. This whole point so far was getting Garon here to being the leader of the Isle. But now that he is the king of the West and all that, it's now fully shifting. So at first we had like, oh, we finished this, like what's next? How is we gonna move forward from here? But now we've accomplished that. We had a little bit of that downtime, and now the voice is shifting, being not cryptic anymore, being upfront, being Garon, this is what's gonna happen, and this is the only way things are gonna end. What is gonna be your decision? And then Garon from there does shift our tone to being like, okay, let's get into the next thing so we can move forward and get this over with. Not only that, but we also see that the voice does take an active role in saving Garon's life, which is super interesting and super good. Obviously, we don't want him dying. But it definitely this time fully protected him when nobody else was around to do so. So the voice is definitely taking much more of an active role, much more of an active personality, a little bit more of a characterization to him. So hopefully that voice will continue to have this kind of personality going through to the end of whatever time it's got. Possibly it'll help Garon out for a very long time. Possibly it might be out by the time the battle with Torak happens. We'll just have to see. What do you think of this section with the voice and its kind of development at this point? I mean, it's pretty interesting that we've kind of had just this minor touch of it here and there through the first 3.5 books, and then now here in book 4 we're fully getting it as more of a full-fledged character. Alright, let's go ahead and move forward with talking about Belgarion as king. So Belgarion at this point has not really had an upbringing for royalty. He's not really been in charge of anything. He's not really been made or allowed to be make his own decisions. He's really kind of not had any preparation whatsoever for this role. And that, I think, is an interesting way of going about it. Not saying that he should know who he is, but you would think that there'd be a little bit more prepping in something for setting him up to be this king of the whole West, you know? So I think it's really super cool and interesting to see how he steps up to the plate and to see how he is going to make this role work and figure out what he needs to do and how he needs to handle things. And truly, I don't think he does a bad job. I think so far he is inexperienced, but still smart enough to make some good decisions and to make some of his own decisions and not be afraid of making his own decisions. He is actually actively making his own choices, unless he is, you know, having some kind of doubts about what he should do, or having something that he knows is just way out of his zone of knowing anything about. He then talks to Belgariad, Polgara, whoever for some advice, but in the end he makes his own decision based on that advice, and sometimes he doesn't even ask for advice if he feels that he already knows how he wants to handle the situation. And though he makes those decisions, and Polgara and Belgariad do make comments about how, like, oh, I see that's how you handled it. I'm not sure if that's how you should have handled it or not, but that's what you did, and you'll have to decide how to handle it in the future. So they don't berate him for his choices. They don't tell him he can't make good decisions without him. They really do treat him as if whatever he says to do is going to be what works for him and how he's going to choose to do things. So it's very much a different approach from Garon's point as well as Belgariad and Polgar's point of view. And I find it very good that he is willing to make decisions on his own as well as being smart enough to ask for help when he does need that help. So definitely good beginning, I feel like, for Belgarion as being a king and a leader, especially a leader of such a great group of people, because technically he's supposed to be the leader over all the other kings of the West. He's supposed to be the united leader of all this area. He handles situations even on his own, which is another part of him making his own active decisions, like the whole part about him being almost killed. He handles that very discreetly, very much on his own. He makes his own decision about that, and at the end he does question a little bit if he should have handled it that way or not, but he wasn't afraid to make his own choice, and he did think through why he was making the choice that he did. He didn't just deliberately jump in and go, oh, I'm gonna do this and this and this. And he's like, no, I'm gonna handle it this way. He knew who it was that attacked him, and he thought, okay, this is how I'm gonna go about it. Of course, nobody is perfect. Of course, he is young and has never had this much responsibility before, so he's gonna make mistakes. Not saying that the way he handled anything was a mistake at this point, but it does make him question himself and wonder if he did make a mistake or not. But he is not afraid to decide what he wants to do and move forward with that. So that's a really good sign that he can do that, especially without all of this preparing him, no preparation, no way of even being really a leader, and him not really ever wanting to be a leader. He really does want to just be a simple person. And I think that is a good quality for a leader, because they're not going to then just be drunk with power, He does also, like I said, seek advice when he needs it, so he's not being rash or dumb in any way. He is very taking this role very, very seriously, which is another good aspect of him being king at this point, is he's not just going in there, making it so that way he assumes everyone else is going to make the decision for him. He's just going to be a figurehead, and he's also trying to make it where he's making his decisions, and he's trying to do a good job. He's really taking the job seriously, taking his role seriously, understanding what this means for his life and his future, and wanting to do the very best that he can. And I really admire him for that, as well as someone who was not expecting to have this position, someone who didn't really want this position. He is being thrust into this position and kind of having to just go flying by the seat of his pants on it. He's really taking it seriously and really trying to be a good leader to the people that he's going to be over, and I really admire him for that. I also admire the fact that he decides that, though part of it is a little selfish, because he didn't want to do that whole war thing. He did have that meeting, and he's like, oh, this war could be going on for your whole life. You could be 80 years old by the time you actually have a face-off with Torak, or before it's done. And he's just like, I don't want to be at war until I'm 80. So part of this decision is a little bit selfish, but his decision is also very brave and very good when he chooses to go and fight Torak now. He doesn't wimp out and be like, oh, I don't want to face him until I absolutely have to. He doesn't say, oh, I need more training, or, oh, I'm going to waste time. He's like, I'm just going to go, I'm going to do this. We're going to get it done so I don't have to be at war forever. And two, if none of the war is going to matter with all these people dying and it being, bad for everybody in the whole lot of it, if we're just going to have this big war that means nothing, because either way, I have to face against Torak one-on-one, and then, everyone else is just going to die for nothing. And he makes that comment a couple times where he's like, let's just not waste the lives. And let's just go out and get to Torak and do our thing and be done with them and be done with it all. So I do really admire his choice to go ahead and be brave and just put himself out there and get it done. And whatever's going to happen is going to happen. He doesn't waste time with saying, I'm going to need training, I'm going to need all this stuff to face off a god. He doesn't say, oh, let me just give myself some time by having a little bit of a war first so I can, be in the background and learn some things first. He's just like, okay, this is what needs to be done. This is how we get things completely settled. Let's just go, get it done with. We'll just get it. Let's just crack to it, you know? So I do really admire his choice to be brave and just go for it. Let's just get her done. So let me know what you think about him as king at this point. Hopefully we'll see a little bit more of him as a king by the end of the book. Of course, right now they're going to be traveling a while to be able to get to Torak, and we're going to see what events happen and kind of deter them in the meantime. But hopefully we will see a little bit more of him in this role and see a bit more about how he handles the situation and how this journey to Torak also helps him and continues to help him grow and makes him into more of a leader. Last but not least, let's go over our nitty gritty. So I have 3 different things I thought would be important to mention for us to keep moving forward with and just would be fun to kind of throw out there for you guys. The first one was that Garon ordered the orb to stop being so bright and stuff like that when they're taking the sword down, and he goes, stop that, doing that or whatever, and the orb actually calms down. I thought that was a super interesting moment, especially because Belgariad gives that look like, how did you do that? Like that, what? That's not what I expected to have happen. Especially because in a sense, it could be kind of considered that he like used the orb, commanded the orb, you know, and it didn't do anything to him. So it's pretty interesting that even though, you know, as this family is recognized by the orb to be its protector and to not be selfish with it, it's not really known that they actually try and command the orb or do anything with the orb. They just use it as it's on the sword. So I think Belgariad was very surprised and interested in the fact that he could actually talk to the orb and it listened to him. And we will see if that comes into play in the future. I definitely think that we don't know exactly what the relationship between Garon and the orb is at this moment in time. I think we'll have more to learn about that. Second is that Erend was seemingly still connected to the orb in some way, and Garon seems to recognize that he somehow just knows that they were leaving, and that's why it doesn't really prove that he's connected still to the orb, but it seems like he still has this connection based on the fact that he knew that they were leaving or connected to maybe the prophecy. But he comes out and says goodbye, which I think is super, super sweet, as he just comes and he's like, goodbye, Belgarion, goodbye. He just wanted to see them off and wish them a happy, not happy, a safe journey, there we go, in the way that he could. And I think that that's super sweet and does show that maybe he's still connected to the orb or to the prophecy in some way. And maybe we will find out what that is. Maybe it's nothing else, but definitely find it interesting that he still has that kind of mystic connection where he knows more than he should, especially as being a little boy that was raised to be a very innocent person. And last but not least, something that I think is kind of funny is that we have this whole buildup of like Sinedra and Garon's gonna be married, they become engaged, we have this whole thing about them fixing up the arrangement for the engagement and all this kind of stuff in the treaties or whatever. And they're still not married yet. He escapes before, well not escapes, but he decides, hey, let's go kill Torak before he's married to her. And I do feel like that's gonna be not so great for him when Sinedra finds out that he's gone. And obviously when he didn't leave a note specifically for her, I think that's also gonna get him in trouble. He told Belgariad that he thought he should, and he's like, no, Pelgara will tell her everything she needs to know. And I'm like, she's gonna be ticked off at you, Garon, that you left before you were married to her, you left without telling her, you left without a note, and you're not married. I think she's not gonna be very happy. They keep saying that Pelgara's not gonna be very happy and that she's gonna just chase after them. And part of me is like, maybe, but then part of me is also like, well, if this is like the destiny and she knows that this is destiny, why would she be so mad? But it's also Pelgara, so I guess she's probably gonna be mad too. I just feel like there's gonna be 2 very mad women back at the island. And we're gonna see what happens with that, hopefully. I would love to hear your thoughts on this section of the book. I'd love to hear your thoughts on where we're going. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, I would love to hear about them. So please, if you have anything at all you'd like to contribute to this discussion, please leave it down below if that is a good place for you. If not, you're also welcome to contact me through social media. I do have a Twitter, which is @fantasyfiction1. I also have Facebook page where you can go ahead and message me through there or see all my updates, and that's /fantasyfiction1. You are welcome to get more content from me if you head over to the blog, fantasyfictionfanatics.net. I've got lots of things going on over there, like book reviews. I've got book suggestions over there. I've got different types of reading and fantasy deliberations that I do, which are just my thoughts on different things or explaining terminology, writing tips, a whole bunch of different kind of stuff over there. So if you want more content from me, go ahead and check that out. I also have a newsletter that you can sign up for over there if you'd like monthly updates for the channel, for the blog, from me, as well as some behind the scenes stuff that I post on there. Also, if you want to talk to your fellow fantasy fanatics, please join our Discord. We would love to have you, and the link will be down in the description box below. We have several people over there talking, chatting, having a good time, getting to know each other, as well as being able to enjoy talking to others about fantasy books and getting recommendations, as well as other topics as well. Just a lot of fun stuff and a lot of fun conversations. So hopefully you'll join us over there. We would love to have you. I am on there as well, so if you'd like to reach out to me, you can do so on there as well. I guess that is it for this time. Hopefully you will stick with us for the next Belgariad class, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.